Please subscribe my YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another updates from my YouTube channel. Talk about Legato interview questions. So one of my friend and colleague is attended Legato. So he is provided like these interview questions. Okay, thanks for providing these interview questions. I'm going to cover like the questions and answers as well here. Okay, so let me open my PPT here. So the first one is, if you serialize the object values with static and transient, what will happen? Okay, so basically if you serialize the object with values on static, so then it will be serialized, because here the transient modifier will be ignored and static modifier will take over the actions. So let me explain this program here. So here if you observe here, we have a couple of variables a, b, c, d, e, f. Okay, so a and b is transient, one is initialized, another one is non-initialized. Same thing, we have static variable, one is initialized, another one is non-initialized. Okay, so the third one is, we have declared transient and static both combination to the c and f. One is initialized, another one is non-initialized here. Okay, so you can serialize this object by using file output stream and object output stream here. Okay, you can write it this object, and to deserialize this, so we can use file input stream and object input stream here. You can deserialize and we can read the values. So if you run this, you can see the output here. So the first two variables is null here. Okay, because we have declared as a transient. So if you declare as a transient, it will ignore the this values. And the third one is static. Even if you declare the static, so there is no impact on the serialization. Okay, we are getting c variable and d variable here. And coming to this, the both combination transient and static. Okay, even if you declare the transient and static, so there is no impact. Okay, so the next one is how to create custom exception. So to create the custom exception, we have to extend the exception, or like to extend the runtime exception. Okay, so here I have extend the exception, and I have a variable string message, and I have a one constructor custom exception. I'm just passing one string variable. So this is how you can create the custom exception. Okay, so what if if the interviewer asks, so the difference between extends exception versus runtime exceptions. Okay, so some difference is there. That is like, if you extend a runtime exception, you don't need to be declare it in throws class. So because runtime exception is a unchecked exception, and if you extend the exception, you do declare it in throws class, because it is a checked exception. Okay, so I will explain the example here. Open the custom exception. Okay, here I am extending the exception. Okay, I have some message and constructor. Okay, I have two string method to provide description of this message. And here, so I'm just throwing this exception by using throw keyword. Okay, so if you extend the exception, you have to throw this custom exception. You have to throw this custom exception, or like you have to surround with the try or catch block. Okay, and if you extend with the runtime exception, okay, this is not mandatory. Okay, it doesn't warn you. And if you extend the exception, it will ask to like unhandled exception, that is custom exception, add exception to the method signature. So that means like either you can add the exception to the method signature, or like you can surround with the try or catch block. Okay, that is the difference. Okay, so the next one is, can we override the default method in Java 8? Yes, we can override the default method. So how we can override the default method? Let me explain here. Example. Okay, here I have two interfaces, one interface and two interface, but these two interfaces having the same default method, that is display method. Okay, So this default method overriding implementing this one or two interfaces here. Okay, so to override this default method, okay, so let's remove this. I will explain. So I'm just creating the object for this class and I'm just calling this overriding a display. So that means we are implementing one or two interfaces. I'm calling this display method. Okay, must be caught or declared to be thrown. Okay, unreported custom exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. So it is throwing some exception. Okay, let me add exception to the method signature. So now run this. So it is throwing some exception. Okay, one or two are incompatible. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to override that default method. So let's implement that default method here, and if you override that method, okay, then it will resolve that issue. So either you can define like one display method, or if you want to be override another display method as well, you can display here, you can override here. Okay, so let's super dot display one interface and two interfaces. This is how you can override the default method. So how to get highest paid employees by using streams? Okay, so we have a streams in Java 8 by using, so we have to get it the highest paid employee. Okay, so let's go back to code, and here, so highest paid employee. So here I have employee, so which will have like ID, name, age and salary. Okay, so I just created some dummy data. So what we need to do is we have, so employee list, we have stream, and we have a collect method. Inside that we can use the collectors dot max by. This is important. Okay, so the collectors will have like max by and min by. Okay, such kind of methods we can use those methods, and we have like comparator dot comparing double. Okay, so to compare that, so we have like couple of methods, right? So we can use that. So that is comparing double. Inside that I'm going just providing like salary here. Okay, so by using salary it's going to be comparing, it's going to be get it the max paid employee. Okay, let's execute this. So it has to be get ran because he is the highest paid employee. Okay, so if you see here, we got the output ran, so that is 80,000 here. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so does Java 8 lambda supports the recursive call? No, because so the lambda implementations are mostly anonymous functions because it doesn't have any names. Okay, so coming to the recursion, a recursion method, a method calls itself. Since anonymous function does not have any name, right? So it cannot be called by itself. So that means like any anonymous lambda cannot be called by itself. Okay, but if we have lambda function declarations as a member variable or like class variable, then Java 8 supports recursion with lambda functions, right? But Java 8 does not support lambda function declaration with local variable because lambda function declaration does not support the local variable. Okay, if we have that feature, then we can make use of this recursive call. And what is the difference between collections versus streams? And coming to the collections, collections are mainly used to store and group the data. Okay, whereas streams are mainly used to perform the operations on the data. That means like streams are like consume the data and it will perform the operations on the data. And the next one is you can add or remove the elements from the collections. Okay, so but you can't add or remove the elements from the streams. So collections has to be iterated externally. So by using some for each statements, whereas like streams are internally iterated. Okay, and collections can be traversed multiple times, and whereas like streams are traversed by only once. So that means like if you are trying to iterate streams uh, for multiple times, you will get it the exception, whereas like collections you can traverse the multiple times. Okay, that is the difference. And collections are eagerly constructed, whereas streams are lazily constructed. So these are the differences. We have a couple of examples. Okay, so collections list set map is the collections, whereas by using stream we can do it like filtering, mapping and matching. Okay. And what is the constructor chaining? So constructor chaining is the process of calling one constructor of a class from another constructor of the same class, or like another class using the current object of the class. So we have like two ways. So there are two ways by which we can use the constructor chaining in Java. So these ways depends on whether we are using it in the same class or different class. If we are using in the same class, then we can use this keyword. So if you are using in different class, then we can use this super keyword. Okay. And the next one is, if you pass null in method overloading, what will happen? Okay, this is very important. Here if you observe, here we have a m1 method. Okay, so in coming to the overloading, so we have the same method name and different in the method signature. Okay, here we have a object and here we have a string. So if you are trying to pass the null, so what will happen? So let's see the example. Okay, here object, here I have a string. So I just created object for this null check. I'm just calling the m1 method. I'm just passing null here. So if you execute here, what will happen? See, so we got this string argument. Okay, so in overloading, always like child argument will get the higher priority. Okay, so you should keep in mind, so child argument will get the higher priority in overloading. Okay, that's it. And if the interviewer will ask what will happen if I provide, instead of object, if I provide like integer, so what will happen? So basically it will throws the compile time error, because it's an ambiguous error, so it doesn't know which one it has to be called. Okay, so you can just prepare this one as well. So this is also important here, guys. The next one is, what is the difference between JP and CRUD repository? So if you see this diagram, we have a JPA repository which will extend the paging and sorting repository, which extends this CRUD repository. Okay, again like this CRUD repository is finally going to extend the repository, but we have a couple of differences. Let's see what are the differences here. So coming to the CRUD repository provides the methods like save, find by ID, find all, delete, delete by ID to perform the CRUD operations. Okay, so if you want to perform the CRUD operations, you can extend your repository to this CRUD repository. And coming to the JP repository, JP also is going to provide like these methods, but we have some extra methods related to the JPA, such as a delete records in a batch by using delete in batch. Okay, if you want to delete the records in batch, then we can delete it by using delete in batch. If you want to flush the data, you can use the flush or like save and flush methods here. And CRUD repository doesn't provide methods for implementing pagination and sorting. Okay, so whereas JP repository will provide that, because JP repository extends the paging and sorting repository, and it provides all the methods for which are useful for implementing pagination and sorting. So if you want to perform mainly CRUD operations, define your repository using the CRUD repository. Okay, so if you have to perform CRUD as well as batch operations, okay, or like if you want to perform like pagination and sorting, so then you can define your repository extending the JP repository. So that is the difference. So how to create the custom JPA repository? So this is also very important. Okay, here I just provided one example. So let me explain. So I already cover in separate video. Okay, let me open my GitHub code here. Okay, so here we have employee custom repository. Okay, employee repository and employee custom repository implementation. First of all, we have to create the employee custom repository. Let's open this. So if you see here, let me maximize this. So here I have created employee custom repository. Okay, so this will have find by first name, right? So you can declare with at the rate of repository here. So this is the first thing, and after that, so you can provide the implementation for that repository. maximize this. You see here I'm just implementing this custom repository. So here I'm taking the entity manager and I'm using some SQL query here, okay, and I'm just make use of this query and I'm just returning some result list here, okay. And so our employee custom repository is ready now. So we have to define our repository by extending jp repository, right? So this is how we will create. So first of all, like, we will create the interface employee repository which will extend the jp repository, and jp repository will extend the entity class name and the type. Okay, employee is entity class and the type is integer here, and whatever that custom repository you have created, you can just pass it by providing comma, and you can, this is my custom repository, this is employee custom repository. This is how you can define custom repository here, okay. So if you want like in detail, so you can just go through my video, okay. So I'm going to adding that video link in the video description, okay. So please let me know if you have any doubts. And what is the difference between REST template get for object versus get for entity? Okay, so in REST template we have a couple of methods like get for object, get for entity, and we have like exchange method, and we have like post for entity, post for object, okay. So basically here the get for object mainly it retrieves an entity using the http get method on the given url. So we can provide like url, okay. uh, so by using that given url, it's going to be retrieve the entity by using the http get method. But what is the difference between get for object and get for entity? So the main difference is get for entity is going to be returns the response entity, whereas get for object will not return the response entity, okay. So this is the difference. So the next one is how you people maintain the release. So release means like production release. So basically like let's say that you have like one branch, working branch, okay. On top of that working branch we will create one release. Let's say that 1.0 is your first production release. We will create one tag and top of that branch, okay, and we will push that tag, okay, to the production. And if anything went wrong in the production, again like we will create uh, one more branch on top of that tag, and we will fix that issue in that branch, and again we will create the tag on top of the branch, okay, and we will push that fixed tag to the production. If you want like more detail for this release, so please let me know in the comment section. I will try to prepare the separate video for this. So can we use the JSON instead of YAML in Docker compose file in Docker? So this is related to Docker. So basically for Docker compose we will use uh, YAML file. Okay, so here interviewer is asking, can we use a JSON instead of YAML file? Yes, we can use. How we are going to be use? So we have a command docker compose -f docker compose.json up. Normally if you are using YAML file, we have docker compose up, right? So here instead of docker compose up, we can use docker compose f docker compose.json up. This is how we can use. And how to check the logs in the Docker, okay. So if anything went wrong in your application, if you're deploying your application into the Docker, so you can use this command to check the logs in Docker, that is docker logs and container id, okay. For each container it will going to create like one container id. By using that container id we can get the logs. So what is the difference between horizontal versus vertical scaling, and is vertical scale possible in AWS instance, okay. So so let me explain what is the horizontal and what is the vertical scaling here. Horizontal scaling means like scaling by adding more machine to your pool of resource, okay. If more requests are coming to the one single machine, then we have to increase more machines to control the traffic here, okay. Whereas like vertical scaling refers to scaling and adding more power to your existing machine. You have only one single machine, okay, but you are going to be add like more power like CPUs and RAM to control like traffic here. Okay, that is a vertical scaling. And the final one is like, is vertical scale possible in AWS instance? Yes, vertical scale is possible on Amazon instance. And when to use Amazon SQS? So SQS means like simple queue service. So it's like Kafka or RabbitMQ. So but inside the Amazon we have like SQS topic. Okay, so simple queue service, when there is any asynchronous communication between two services, then we have to use Amazon SQS here. What factors do you consider before choosing Aurora versus RDS database in AWS? Okay, this is very very important. So you should know what is the difference between Aurora versus RDS database. So but I'm going to explain. So the factors, what are the factors we are going to be considered? So we have to check like availability, so database engine support, and cost. So the first one is availability. So especially for the production databases, data backup is critical consideration, right? So we should have the data backup, that is main consideration here. So basically Aurora offers higher availability and better resilience than RDS. Okay, so due to its unique storage model and ability to perform the continuous backups and restores with very low recovery point objective. Okay, so Aurora offers like high availability and better resilience than RDS. Okay, so coming to the availability, Aurora is better one. And coming to the database engine support, so basically Aurora only supports MySQL and PostgreSQL, right? So if you need to run other database engines such as like SQL Server, so you will need to opt for the RDS. Okay, so you can keep in mind. So Aurora only supports MySQL and PostgreSQL. And cost, coming to the cost, Aurora is generally more expensive than RDS for the same workloads, because so it is price based on the type and size of the all the instances and ABS volume. So Aurora pricing is mainly based on the instance size, and storage is billed according to the actual size. Okay, Aurora pricing is mainly based on the instance size and storage. Okay, so you have to keep it in mind. So RAID replicas represent an extra cost on both platforms. So if you want like RAID replicas, okay, so the extra cost will be we have to bear. So these are the 3 points you can keep it in mind while you are choosing RDS versus Aurora. Okay, and so the next one is which DB, I mean like which database are you using in your application? So why MongoDB? Why MongoDB? Why not Cassandra? We have Cassandra as well. I think interviewer is asking the difference between MongoDB versus Cassandra. Why you people are using only MongoDB while we have Cassandra as well? Okay, Cassandra is a much more stationary database. Sorry guys, it facilitates static typing and demand the categorization and definition of columns beforehand. Okay, MongoDB database that does not require a schema. Basically, it's not requires any schema, naturally making it more adaptable to the changes. Sorry guys. When it comes to the Cassandra, so there is a more traditional model. Okay, Cassandra has a table structure using rows and columns. So still it is more flexible than relational databases since each row is not required to have the same columns. Okay, so Cassandra has the table structure using rows and columns, but compared to the relational databases, it is very good. Okay, and coming to the MongoDB data model is categorized as an object and document oriented. This is MongoDB is a documented oriented database. So this means that it can represent any kind of object structures which can have properties or even nested for multiple levels. Okay, and Cassandra does not support secondary indexes. Okay, so that means like it has only cursory support for secondary indexes. So secondary index is restricted here. Okay, so whereas MongoDB does supports the concept of the secondary indexes. Okay, by using secondary indexes we can improve the performance of the application. What about the Cassandra? What kind of data it will support? Cassandra only support JSON data format. Okay, whereas a MongoDB supports JSON and BSON data formats. So BSON means It's a binary serialization format used to store the documents. Okay, that is the advantage over the Cassandra. And Cassandra has no aggregation framework and requires external tools like Hadoop, Spark, and others. Okay, if you want like aggregation framework support, then you have to use Hadoop and Spark inside the Cassandra. Whereas MongoDB has a built-in aggregation framework, so this feature allows to retrieve the data by utilizing an ELT multi-stage pipeline to transform the documents into the aggregated results. Okay, so you should explain what are the advantages over the Cassandra, because I have highlighted only few points here. Okay, if you have like any other points, you can highlight. So that's why you are using MongoDB. You have the requirement in that way, so that is the reason we are using MongoDB. You have to be explained in this way. And next, the microservices. So what is circuit breaker? Basically, a service generally calls the other services to retrieve the data, and there is a chance that, okay, that downstream service may be down, right? So the failure of one service can potentially cascade to the other services throughout the application. Then how we are going to be do that? By using circuit breakers. This is the circuit breaker architecture diagram. Okay, so initially this is in closed state. So it is in closed state means like, so the requests are reaching to the services. Okay, so I mean like, when we have like service A and service B, the requests are reaching to the service B, like when we are hitting from service A. So if service B is down for a particular time, okay, when we are hitting the request to the services B, okay, then failure rate will be above the threshold. If the failure rate is above the threshold, automatically this will goes to the open stage. Okay, so that means like the request can't reach to that service B. So after wait duration, it will goes to the half open state. Okay, so half open state. And again like, if the failure rate is above the threshold, so then it will goes to the open state. Or like if the failure rate is below the threshold, then it will goes to the closed state. Okay, so this is how the circuit breaker will look like. Okay, and I have explained like, resilience 4j with circuit breaker. Okay, you can just go through my video. I'm going to attach the video link in this video description here. Okay, so to implement this circuit breaker, we have two things. One is like, hashticks and resilience 4j. So the next one is, what is the difference between hashticks versus resilience 4j implementation perspective. So what is the difference? So coming to the hashticks call to the external systems to have to be wrapped in hashticks command. Basically we have to use the hashtick command while we are implementing hashticks. Whereas resilience 4j provides a higher order functions to enhance any functional interfaces, lambda expressions, sorry, or method reference. So that means like we can make use of Java 8 functional interfaces, lambda expressions, and method references here. Okay, but hashticks does not supports like Java 8 features here, and any decorated function can be executed synchronously or asynchronously by using completable feature or RxJava. Okay, and coming to the hashticks only performs a single execution when it is in half open state to determine whether to close a circuit breaker. Okay, hashticks only perform single execution. So basically, if you want to determine whether it has to be close or open the circuit breaker, then it only performs a single execution. But resilience 4j allows like to perform a configurable n number of executions and compares the result against the configurable threshold to determine whether to close a circuit breaker. Okay, so that is the advantage of resilience 4j. And coming to the hashticks emits a streams of events which are useful to system operators to monitor metrics about execution outcomes and latency. Whereas resilience 4j provides a custom Rx Java operators to decorate any observable or flowable with a circuit breaker, bulkhead, or rate limiter. Okay, so it's going to be custom Rx Java operators to decorate any observable or flowable with a circuit breaker or bulkhead or rate limiter. Okay, so that is the difference. Okay, okay guys, I have covered like all the interview questions. Okay, and so I missed one more interview question. Okay, So I'm going to generally you will write, okay, employee repository like this. So this repository extends the JP repository, and we have only entity class employee here. Okay, so the question is, so when we have like two entity class, so if you want to implement parallelly, so let's say that we have department as well. Let's take, so here we have employee and department. Okay, then how we are going to be make use of JP repository here? So that is the interview question. Okay, so I'm not going to cover here. So if people let me know in the comment section, so how we are going to be implement when we have like, okay, one or more entities. So if you want to implement parallelly in JP repository, how you are going to be achieve that? Okay, so please let me know the answer in the comment section. Okay, so if you would like to know how we are going to be implement, that is also fine. I'm going to prepare separate video for that. Okay, so that's it guys. So thanks for watching. So if you like this video, please go ahead and like. If you haven't subscribed my YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe my YouTube channel. Thanks, bye, have a good day.